Welcome everybody to I'll Be Right Back, the show where we take a look at a horror movie. And last time, Peter, we talked about Trick or Treat, which is a movie that I love, that you'd never seen. And this week we thought we'd flip reverse it and talk about a movie that I've never seen, but you love.
Yeah, so Fright Night is a movie that I watched many years ago and just loved, fell in love with the characters. But James, before we start, we should really introduce this properly, shouldn't we? Welcome to Fright Night. For real.
Oh, it's so bad. It's so
What do you mean that? I've been working on that for friggin' weeks. What are you
That's
talking
the best
about?
you could come up with, isn't it? So Fright Night, directed by Tom Holland. So he went on to do Child's Play and of course went on to play Spider-Man in the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
He's had a busy few years.
It's amazing how young he looks, isn't it?
Yeah.
I absolutely love this. I thought this was
so
phenomenal. Usually I like my vampires and like werewolves in sort of a 1880s London kind of setting, you know, that kind of vibe.
Smoky and gothic kind of.
Exactly, yeah. You know, Lost Boys I like, but I've never really had that attachment to it that I know a lot of people have. So going into this, I was unsure, but I think the 80s setting really is a huge part of the charm of this, just the 80s-ness of it. The costuming, the music particularly, I think is phenomenal.
The
The
hairstyles.
hairstyles. The hairstyles. Wow. Just absolutely incredible. And it really lends to the charm of this. So yeah, I absolutely adored that. Charlie Brewster. Now, initially I was a bit unsure about him because you have this opening scene where he's making
prick.
out. Yeah, well, he's supposed to be that kind of guy next door. But like you have this opening scene where he's making out with Amy as the girlfriend. And he's like pissed off that she's not having sex with him. I'm like, all right, Charlie, relax. Like she doesn't want to do it. But then you realize, oh no, Amy's a lunatic. The most toxic person I think I've ever seen in a movie. Like she's just jealous, clingy, like emotionally manipulative. She's, oh no, Charlie, but she jumps in bed with the vampire, no problem at all.
Well. So Amy's 16 in this movie, and again that brings us back to this whole discussion we've had before about this was a film that came out in 85, I believe, and we talked a little bit about this when we talked about Friday the 13th, about how acceptable it seems to have been back then for young women to be sexualized. I kind of read this as when she's being seduced by the main vampire, that he was using his vampire charms, his hypnotism and things like that, and it wasn't all her choice.
Let the vampire have her, Charlie. You deserve better. Maybe take the money you'd spend on dates and fix your car up, you know, because you have a Mustang, but it's like half painted for some reason. I don't
And
know
it's
why.
smashed up now anyway, isn't it? Because he smashed it up halfway through.
I read that it was Tom Holland's car and it got destroyed like 10 years after the movie. But like Charlie's so energetic in this movie. Every scene, he's just screaming at people, like trying to desperately get them to believe him, and they just don't. But I don't know. I think there is like a really great likability to him in spite of the fact that he's a bit of a dick.
Yeah, no, I agree. And you know, I think the movie lends so well to that kind of 80s rear window kind of thing about, you know, the person that's in on it. It's very similar to another movie with Tom Hanks, The Burbs, which is a similar kind of storyline about the crazy people who move next door and he's the only person that thinks they're murderers and there's shenanigans going on. And I think, you know, the performance in this is very good in relation to that.
Well, like for me, I found this kind of a mix between Rear Window and Dracula. Particularly Dracula, there's a lot of kind of comparisons you can make. Jerry, who is the main vampire, who I think Chris Sarandon steals this movie. Like he's absolutely incredible. He's so sexy and charismatic. Just the way he moves on screen, it's incredible. In spite of the fact that I always thought of Chris Sarandon as kind of just a normal looking guy, the fact that you can go into this and just be like the sexiest person I've ever seen in my life is incredible.
Dracula, yes, he's horrific when he turns into a vampire, but he's always supposed to be that kind of seductive, suave, kind of almost sexual kind of being. And I think it's played out beautifully in this. He's superb in it.
He even has his own kind of Renfield type character. You have with Amy the kind of Mina Harker thing of you look like the woman I was in love with years ago. So there's a lot of Dracula in this.
And that was actually his idea. He got the script and he asked for some changes to be added to it because he didn't want him to be just a black and white character. He also added the stuff about Jerry always eating apples. He thought because he would be part fruit bat.
I would have thought it was more so because you're seeing him biting something constantly, which is sort of a reminder and intimidating thing. I love the bit where he throws the apple at him when he's in the bush, just looks directly at him. I thought that was great. Is this the origin of the guy eating the apple looks like a dickhead? You know, that became kind of a trope in movies. Is this the origin of that?
I don't know. Let's just say yes. You heard it here first.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, absolutely. Another character I was kind of, well, I would say I hated, similar to Amy, is Evil Ed. He's so fucking annoying in this. Like his little, like, oh, you're so cool, Brewster, and just the way he talks.
Whiny little squeaky voice. Yeah.
So irritating. Like his friend comes to him, like, desperate for help, and he goes, why should I help you? And Charlie goes, I have $8. Okay, I'll help you then. Like, well, maybe because your friend is in trouble, maybe you give him a hand.
I don't think they're friends. I think it's kind of hinted at throughout the movie that Ed is bullied and keeps referring to him as Evil Ed, and he keeps snapping back at him. The bit where he's turned Evil Ed at the end, I think's heartbreaking. That realisation that he's basically saying, my life's shit, and yes, I want to be a vampire. And for me, that's the turning point of the character. I really enjoy him after that. I think he's great as the kind of the vampire.
I have in my notes here, Peter, I think it clicks together when he becomes a vampire. I think it really works that over the topness of it. The bit where he's in the bed and he has this like strawberry blonde wig on, like awful Raggedy Ann doll, and it fools Peter Vincent for a few minutes. Like, he doesn't immediately go, that's a man wearing a wig. Honestly, I think ambiguous whether it's a death or not. This scene where he gets stabbed through the chest, and it's so drawn out, like it's proper like 2 or 3 minutes long of him just kind of in agony, changing back from the wolf to the vampire, and the effects of it I thought were fantastic as well. There's a lot of kind of cool, I think they like melt something with candles, like layers of candles, and then they reverse it so it's like something coming back. Really clever way of doing that.
For a 1985 movie, I think the special effects in this are still pretty strong. Some of the effects look really good.
Yeah, I love the monstrous design of the vampires and like the kind of different stages of that where they're kind of like balding and hideous. I love even you get to see the kind of just the sexy guy with the fangs. That's probably my favorite look. But yeah, there's some really great stages to that. The pacing of this movie is quite interesting, I think. It's so fast. The movie doesn't play coy with the fact that Jerry is a vampire. Like within the first 5 minutes, that accusation's kind of thrown there as soon as he sees him with the coffee. He's like, maybe he's a vampire, and like the movie just kind of rolls with that. Also, I thought this was weird. The cop decided to bring him to the house. It's like, okay, yeah, your neighbor thinks you're a murderer. Like he's gonna come with me and check if you're a murderer. But like usually you would have in a movie, like Rear Window, for example, where all the proof that Charlie's built up be disproven on the spot. Oh, you have a coffin. Why do you have a coffin? Oh, we're carpenters. And, it doesn't do that at all. It's just he goes in, he spouts vampire, and then he's immediately discredited, and he's like, oh shit, now they know that I know that they're vampires.
We've talked about how Jerry is a sexy vampire, but he's also incredibly menacing and sinister when he's not doing the vampire bit. When he says things like, you wouldn't want to cause your friends any more pain, would you, Charlie? It's almost Hannibal Lecter kind of psychology creepiness. Do you know what I mean?
I love how far he goes with it. Like the bit where Charlie comes into the house and the mom is there with him. He's just doing murder double entendres the entire time, and the mom's not finding any of it suspicious. Peter Vincent is a character I really adored in this. This is an actor I'm not really familiar with. Roddy McDowall.
Yeah, Planet of the Apes. He's from the original Planet of the Apes series. Big time actor. I grew up on the old Hammer horror movies, Peter Cushing, Vincent Price and stuff like that, and that's who this is meant to be, a bad version of them.
It was originally written for Vincent Price. But his health kind of declined and he couldn't do it then in the end.
Absolutely, yeah. And I just love it. I mean, from that opening scene where Peter Vincent's on the TV, even in that movie, he goes to stake the vampire and the stake's the wrong way around. So he's holding it the wrong way around. He kind of does the hammed up back sport of Satan or whatever. I love it. I love that performance. I think it's one of the performances of his career, if I'm honest. I think it's a superb character.
I do love that opening, the kind of fake outness of it, because for me, watching this for the first time, assumed that was the conversation that was happening in. And there's these weird, like, kissing sound effects that play that were just, like, so over the top. I was like, oh no, is this going to be terrible? And yeah, I love that they play It's a Hammer style movie. But even, like, just the cadence of it, there's so much of Peter Cushing in that. Peter Cushing's one of my favorite actors, just like how he speaks, the accent and everything is spot on.
The movie's original ending was going to be Charlie and Amy kissing in the bed with Peter playing in the background, and when they watched the TV, Peter said something along the lines of, and this is what vampires look like, but we know that's not how they really look, is it? And then he was going to turn into a vampire on screen, so leading to the fact that he'd been turned at some point. But because they enjoyed his performance so much, I think they binned that idea.
Why does Amy's hair grow?
So well, why wouldn't it? Let's be honest, I love this movie, so I'm not criticising. There are an awful lot of issues with continuity in the movie. Bites disappearing in between scenes on Ed's neck, the crucifix scar on his forehead changes shape regularly. The disco scene, you quite clearly see the vampire's reflection in the mirrored walls. Amy's hairstyle and dress changes 3 or 4 times in that scene.
I had seen she's sort of an iconic piece of imagery for this movie, so I just assumed that was going to be a different character. So we're 3/4 of the way through the movie and I'm like, where's this other vampire lady? And I was like, maybe it's the mom. The mom kind of just exits the movie at a certain point. Billy Cole, so he's the kind of Renfield character.
I mean, I love just how much he's loving life. He's always kind of grinning and sinister, smiling and stuff like that. And then obviously we get the scene at the end where he's dispatched, and I have to say, I don't know what he is. He's not a vampire, he's not a human, he's not a zombie, I guess.
I sort of took it that he had been just turned, like he was turned like literally that day, like earlier that day or something, just to help fight at the end. That was my assumption, because you have this fake out. I love how earlier when Charlie's like, how do we deal with him, he just pulls out a revolver. He's like, oh, we'll just shoot him dead, we'll get away with it, like, no.
I mean, I guess what I would say about this movie, it's a bit like for me, films like A Few Good Men and things like that, where for whatever reason, some of the dialogue is just in my head now forever. The bits on the staircase, you know, the backspawn of Satan, you have to have faith for that to work on me, Mr. Vincent. Just some superb dialogue. I just love everything about it. It's a fun, it's what I would class as entry-level horror. It's not too scary, do you know what I mean?
100%. It's a horror comedy, really, isn't it? Like, just fantastically corny in the 80s. This isn't just a standalone movie, Peter. This led to kind of a series of films, remakes, comic books, etc. There is a sequel, Fright Night Part 2.
It's a long time since I've watched it. Watching Fright Night Part 1 has made us want to go back and revisit it, so I will be watching it again shortly. From memory, a lot of the original cast appear. I think Peter Vincent's in it, Amy and Charlie are in it. It's Jerry's sister, I think, is the main vampire, but I can't remember a lot about it, so I do want to go back and check it out.
So there is a film called Kaplana House, which is an unofficial Bollywood remake from 1989. I was watching some clips earlier, Peter, full-on dance sequences and everything. Like,
check that one out. Yeah.
There's, of course, the 2011 remake with Colin Farrell and
which is actually very good. That's a decent movie.
I have seen that one. I saw it back when it came out, so not for a while. I remember some really cool scenes in it, like this bit where he grabs the cross and it kind of shoots into fire.
Well, I think David Tennant does a very good job as the Peter Vincent character.
Chris Angel style. Modern version of that, I think, was clever.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Colin Farrell does a good job, but he's not a patch on the original. In terms of that suave kind of... He doesn't have the same impact for me as Jerry does.
And some of the kind of cast have spoken both good and bad things about that movie, particularly around the tone of it, that maybe kind of missed some of the humor and the cheesiness, which I would definitely agree, but I think it's a fun alternate version of that movie with a great cast. That led to a direct-to-DVD sequel, which is called Fright Night, The New Blood, or something like that. Completely replaces all of the cast of the remake. Apparently terrible.
I have seen that and it's awful. It's absolutely awful. It uses the original cast in name only, really, but it's not good.
There's been a variety of comic books that kind of came out both around the time. I believe the first few issues do the movie and then they kind of move on. And then a more recent series, I think, following Peter Vincent from like 2018. Have you read any of that?
Tom Holland has got the rights to Fright Night again now. So he's started producing the Fright Night by Tom Holland comic book, which is pretty good. I read some of the older Fright Night comics and they were pretty ropey. Jerry gets resurrected at one point and it's all a bit strange. But the exciting thing for me is there is talk of another Fright Night movie coming out as a direct sequel.
Tom Holland has been talking about this lately, as recently as last year. He's writing the script at the moment. It's going to be called Fright Night Resurrection. Jerry's going to be back. Billy's going to be back. Evil Ed is going to be back. So like it's going to be proper follow-on. I'm so excited for that. I'm curious how you explain, and I know they'll probably just knowing the tone of this, they'll just do it in a throwaway line, but why does everyone look older? Because like some of these guys are like 1,000 years old, but they look like 40. Why does Chris Sarandon look 67 now, But yeah, no, I think if you like just have that synthy 80s tone to it, but set in modern day, I think it could be really cool. So yeah, I'd be really looking forward to that. And then there was a book last year, Peter, called Fright Night Origins, which I got on Audible today. So I'm about halfway through it. Yeah. So it is set during the movie with little kind of backstory elements so that you learn a bit more about Jerry's kind of where he came from. So his real name is Gelers Sel Katura. He was from the Ottoman Empire and he was an underling of Dracula. And Dracula killed, before he became Dracula, like Vlad the Impaler, killed his family and became a vampire to get revenge. Gelers is obviously anglicized, so like Jerry Gelers is kind of where that came from. And then Dandridge is the name of a previous vampire hunter that Billy nearly let kill Jerry. So he kind of named him that to taunt him. So I thought that was a really cool backstory element to that. So there's lots of really cool fleshing out the story. And that I think that's the first book of a trilogy. So curious if they'll continue far past, or maybe like Resurrection will be well into development at that stage and they'll kind of bridge them. The audiobook is narrated by Chris Sarandon, so yeah, that really adds a great element. Any final thoughts on Fright Night?
Yeah, well, I mean, for me, there are a lot of these movies since we started doing this show that I remember seeing and have built them into my mind as to how good I think they are, but I've probably not seen them for 20 years. And sometimes when we go back and look at stuff like that, you think, oh Christ, this has not aged well, or this is not as good as I built it in my head to be. This is the exact opposite. I sat with my wife and watched this and we both thoroughly enjoyed it because it's just tongue-in-cheek, it's got some great humour, I think it's got some great special effects, it's got some emotion to it, and just stunning performances. I really do enjoy this movie. I'm so pleased that you've liked it as well.
I think this is fantastic. The 80s-ness of it, the period that it was made in, is a huge part of the charm. I think Jerry Dandridge is probably my favorite vampire character now. One of my favorite villains in the movie. I just loved him. I thought it was incredible. Yeah, the tone of it, it's hilarious. It's got some good action, some really great special effects. It's got the gore. Just an absolute blast from start to finish. So yeah, I can see why this would be one of your favorites, if not your favorite horror movie. And yeah, it's shot up the list on mine as well. So
good stuff.
Absolutely loved it.
Good stuff.
And that's I'll be right back on Fright Night. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to check out the channel where we do One Good Scare live every second Friday. And we'll be right back next time with
Got your doorbusters right here, motherfucker.
Never, under any circumstances, say, I'll be right back. Because you won't be back.